Man, Netflix's first season of live-action One Piece set the bar so high, right? So when Season 2 dropped, the question wasn't just if it would be good, but if it could possibly recapture that same magic. Well, according to one detailed review, the answer's kind of complicated. So let's break down what worked, what totally fell flat, and what it all means for the future of the show.
So, right off the bat, Season 2 throws Luffy and the Straw Hats into the Grand Line, the most dangerous sea in the entire world. And this is where things get real. There's no turning back, the stakes get higher, the enemies get way weirder, and the whole journey becomes 10 times more dangerous. The stage is set for a massive new chapter, which is why the reviewer's take on it is, well, pretty surprising.
So, did it actually live up to all that hype? I mean, think about it. Season 1 was a phenomenon. It was a live-action adaptation that so many people thought was just impossible to pull off. It had this amazing heart, this huge scale, and a sense of adventure that just pulled you in. The expectations for Season 2 were through the roof, but did it capture that same magic?
Well, if you ask this reviewer, the answer is a big, not really. The overall verdict? It was just okay. A definite step back from the incredible heights of the first season. So what happened? Why did it get such a lukewarm reaction? Let's dig in, starting with the biggest difference between the two seasons.
Okay, so the biggest difference between the two seasons, it really boils down to the vibe, the pacing. Season 1 felt so epic because it was patient. It took its time to build the world, to let you connect with the crew. But Season 2, the review says it just felt rushed. It hops between islands and plot points so fast that the grand, sweeping scale that made the first season so special just kind of got lost.
Okay, but look, it wasn't a total disaster. The review is actually pretty quick to point out that Season 2 had these moments of just absolute brilliance. Times when it really nailed those powerful, emotional highs that fans of the original story know and love so much. For instance, 3 moments in particular got some serious praise. The whole introduction to Laboon, the giant, lonely whale, that was handled with so much heart. And then there's that iconic scene where Luffy, with bloodied hands, carries a sick Nami up a frozen mountain, a total standout. But the undisputed highlight, the thing that really blew the reviewer away, was the tragic and beautiful origin story of the crew's new doctor, Tony Chopper.
Yeah, actually, the reviewer straight up calls the Chopper storyline the show's peak writing. Like, this was it. This was the moment where the character development, the emotional gut punch of One Piece was just perfectly captured. It was the absolute high point of the entire season, a moment where everything just clicked into place.
But, having those incredible high points almost made the season's biggest problem feel even worse. And that problem was its crazy, rushed storytelling. The review argues that the show often just chose not to tell its story, which led to some seriously confusing moments.
One of the most frustrating things for this reviewer was the whole disappearing villains problem. You'd have the Straw Hats facing off against these really tough enemies from Baroque works. The tension builds and builds, and then poof, gone. The whole thing gets resolved off screen, and you're left sitting there like, wait, what just happened? Where'd they go?
Like, for example, we never actually see how Luffy frees the giant from that wax prison that's supposed to be unbreakable. Key villains like Mr. 3 and Miss Golden Week, defeated, sure, but we don't get to see it. Miss Valentine gets taken out so fast the reviewer almost forgot it even happened. And these aren't small details, right? These are the big showdowns, the climactic resolutions, just skipped.
What this all adds up to is an experience that just feels incomplete. When you skip the big payoff moments, the crew's wins feel kind of hollow and unearned. And you, the audience, just feel like you missed something important, like a key piece of the puzzle is missing.
All right, so beyond the story problems, there was another huge critique, and this one was all about the visuals. The reviewer found the whole aesthetic so tacky that it kept pulling them right out of the world of One Piece.
The colors were just way too bright, almost painfully saturated. And then you have characters getting into these huge, messy fights and coming out without a speck of dirt on their perfectly clean clothes. It just made everything feel super staged, Too perfect, without any grit. And to top it all off, a lot of the costumes just looked, well, cheap.
The review uses some, let's just say, very colorful language here, calling the costumes 2000s-ish, and comparing the tight leather-clad outfits to a porn parody. Yeah, that kind of tells you just how big of a disconnect there was between what the show was going for and how it actually landed.
But look, this isn't just about I don't like this style. The real argument here is that the costumes felt
totally random, like they had nothing to do with the world's history or who these characters are. The clothes didn't tell a story, you know? It made all the designs feel kind of empty and just for show.
So, when you put it all together, the amazing highs and the really disappointing lows, what's the final verdict? What was the whole point of this season anyway?
The feeling from this review is that Season 2 wasn't really a complete story on its own. It felt more like time pass, you know, just a bridge designed to get us from point A to point C, which would be Season 3. It seemed way more focused on setting up future stories than telling a great one right now.
And that feeling really gets hammered home by the finale. I mean, compare it to Season 1's epic emotional ending. Season 2's just felt cheaply done and super rushed. It didn't have that punch, which kind of proves the point that this season was all about the setup, not the payoff.
So here's the big question we're left with. Was this underwhelming season just a necessary, kind of clunky stepping stone to get to the really good stuff in Season 3? Or are these problems with pacing and visuals a bad sign, a sign of trouble ahead for the series? I guess only time will tell.